hi, my name is Luis. Rachel just told you a little bit about what we are as a product and as an offering. I'll tell you a little bit what we are as a company. And I think that, I mean, in audiences similar to this one, that we've been in other parts of the world, there's always a very emotional discussion about this transition and transformation. And for us, this discussion is not so important, actually, because it doesn't really matter whether you are 20% print or 80% digital or vice versa. I think that the role that we can play in working with you is to accelerate your growth. Now, some of you think that the transition is going too slow, others think that the transition is going too fast, others think that the transition should have happened already. It doesn't really matter for the type of interaction that we would have with you guys as companies, and it doesn't really matter where you stand on this transition. I think that our role is to help you to accelerate growth and to capture value from markets where you operated. Now, why Yext? And I think that to a large extent, this has been covered to what we are as a product or not, so it's essentially a sentence about it. I mean, you're able to store and manage content, not only the basic name, address, phone stuff, but lots of other enhanced content. And I think that, you know, with a multi-language support, global support, it's essentially a location database of record that becomes a source of truth for companies around the world. Now, why power listings? I mean, a lot of it comes from the inconsistency of data and the way that data is managed online. What we are able to provide you is that level of consistency that has lots of different, let's say, improvements across the way that you are present digitally in our publisher network. Now, let me tell you a little bit of a timeline of the company. And this is interesting. When I was, we work with Michael and in Germany with this group of companies. And as I was listening to his presentation, I thought of changing ours and take away this slide. Because the first image that came to my mind was Howard's, which is our founder and CEO grandfather. And somehow he did not fit into a 4-year-old company, right? We essentially came to market 4 years ago, January 2011, when we launched our first power listings offering. I'm not going to take you through all of this, but I'm going to highlight 2 or 3 aspects of it. One of them here in December 2012, when we have reached 100,000 customers. That was an important moment for the company because there was an ongoing bet that if we would reach 100,000 customers by the end of the year, Howard would have a haircut, which he did. Okay? So we moved away from his rock star look into something a little bit more corporate. Another thing that I would like to highlight in here is November 14, so essentially a year ago, when we started to expand our operations internationally. That coincided more or less with me joining the company as well. It was not something that I have started, but it was something that I have joined at the time that the company was wanting to go internationally. And I think that I'll show you a couple of numbers of how have we done over the past year. The last thing that I would like to highlight in here is that today we are essentially, if you go in here to July 15, so a couple of months ago, we have now more than 100 publishers in our publisher network, and we have passed the 500,000 customer locations mark. So we are continuing to grow, we will continue to grow, and you'll have a sense for how, or I'll show you how do we feel how small we are compared to the opportunity in front of us. And that's it. I mean, today we have essentially 550,000 customer locations. We believe that the world is about 50 million publisher locations or customer locations. So we are at about 1% of what we can be, and that's already quite significant, but clearly the opportunity ahead of us is much bigger than the opportunity behind us. We are a US company, we are based out of New York. We had, up until a year ago, essentially 100% of our business was the US market. We have in New York about 450, just over 450 people. In the US, we have about 3,500 partners plus. And as I've mentioned before, we manage more than 500 million customer locations. Now in Europe, we have earlier this year opened our headquarters in London. We have made an acquisition at the very end of last year in Holland that we are now consolidating operations in London. The picture in Europe from a strategic point of view is quite different. We have over the past year established operations in 14 countries. We have currently 18 partners. The reason why there's such a wide discrepancy between the number of partners in Europe and in the US is that we tend, strategically, with the exception of Germany, we want to have one partner per country. So the point in here is not to have hundreds of partners across Europe. The point in here is to choose the right partner per country and then go to market with him. The exception in Germany has to do with the fragmentation of the German market and the way that the German market operates, but essentially everywhere else, this number is not likely to change very significantly because we do not want it to change very significantly. Outside of the US, the first year, which is not completed yet, but we are already above 40,000 locations, and I think that it's fair to say that into next year we'll be well into 6 digits because of everything that we're putting in motion. In Asia Pacific, it's essentially a big zero, and the reason why it's a big zero is because we're starting today, and the reason why we came over here, it's because addressing audiences like this in conferences like this, outside of the US, in Europe mostly, it was actually quite successful to us. And we've heard today a couple of mentions of Cinda before. That's where we started in Europe exactly a year ago. There are, if you want, 14 countries ago, or if you want 18 partners ago, or if you want 40,000 locations ago. And so the past year was quite generous, and we have, let's say, taken solid decisions on how to move forward across Europe, Middle East, and Africa. We would like to do the same in Asia Pacific now. We're not in a rush. We're a young company. At the time I joined a year ago, the average age was 24, so that is quite impressive by any standards. We are now 28, and as I like to say, it's not because I joined. But a year has passed. We all got a little bit older. But so we have, the worst possible thing that a company without growth dynamics can do is to choose the wrong partner. And in our case, because we have a single partner strategy per country, that means I prefer not to be in a certain country than to be in that country with the wrong partner. And so our point in here is not to leave this conference signing 15 contracts and go into Asia Pacific. Our point in here is to understand where do we have interesting opportunities to go to market in this region, and then if we find that we have the right partner in front of us, then go to market. And that might mean that a year from now I'll be here talking about 3 successful case studies, or 7, or realize that it's maybe a little bit too early to come to this part of the world, and essentially come back next year and see how things have changed. Now tomorrow, we decided to split our presentation into 2, and not Rachel and I today, but us today and tomorrow, because not to make it so heavy. Okay? So tomorrow we'll have another 10-15 minute go at it, where we are going to show you 2 very concrete case studies of things that we have done in Europe, and radically different approaches. We have, one of the things that we're quite proud of being a SaaS company is that I think it's fair to say that in the 14 countries we have 14 different business models, or variations of the same business model, because adapting to local partners is absolutely fundamental. And so tomorrow we have chosen 2 of them that we have presented at Cinda. Actually, they have presented themselves at Cinda, and we're taking a little bit of some elements of the different implementations in Czech Republic and in Holland that we'll take you through in more detail tomorrow. And that's essentially it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. We have a minute or so, or a couple minutes maybe, if anyone has any questions or any hands in the air. Well, every time I talk to somebody at this conference or something, I often hear, I say, what's your business? And they say, we're the Yext of fill in the blank. How has the proliferations of we're the Yext of changed your business at all?
The proliferations of what, sorry?
All these, the influx of competitors who are trying to be you. How have you adapted to that, or have you at all? Or how would you sort of set yourselves apart?
I mean, it's
Mike to the...
Yeah, no, I've been at Yext now quite a few years, so I've seen a lot of these. Started actually with single platform first, if I remember, and then there's a string of others throughout the years. I think I'm going to talk about single platform to specifically answer your question, just because that was really the first one. We didn't even have 10,000 customers. And something that single platform, for those who are not familiar, was focused on was actually menus. And I talked about our 45 different fields and how menus is one of them. We decided it was really important to add a menu feature, but we also did products and bios and events. And we added that to sort of stay competitive. But then the more that kind of came about, we can't keep changing our product and our direction. I think that was a good move. But what we started to just focus a lot more was talking about the technology, and that really we're, I think, 100 now product and engineering people. We're a technology powerhouse. We don't have manual claiming, manual solutions, anything like that. And we just stayed heads down focused on working really hard, especially with large players such as Bing or as Apple Maps, which took years to work out those business relationships, but also the technical implementations, just to stay ahead of really the competition. And I think, you know, seeing a demo or just seeing it live, seeing how you can change a core piece of information like your phone number, and that goes live on Yelp and on Facebook instantly, there's no other control like that. I would challenge any of the sort of competitors that have said we're the Yext of whatever, to actually show that same power.
Okay. Oops. So.
Time's up.
Time's up. No, I think we can, if there's another question, we can take it. Otherwise, what I just want to ask very simply is, you're offering your conversations up to publishers here, potentially to be your partners in this region. Could you capsulize what would the product be that they would be bringing to market? I think you've described your technology and et cetera, but typically what is it that they're bringing to that small business customer?
Yeah, I mean, listen, we have, going back to the variations, I mean, the core product is essentially the same, and that is the ability to manage and control your presence management online. Now, what we have realized is that going into now 14 countries, we actually have essentially 14 variations of that same product. And we have a tremendous capacity, is actually something I'm quite proud of, to adapt to what the local market or the partner would require in order to be successful. And these can go from, you know, the simplest, most basic element of the brand, where, I mean, in Ireland our product is called SnapSync. Okay, in Czech Republic it's called Yext. Okay, to things that are a little bit different.
The names are different, but it's the...
No, that's what I was going to say. From simple things like the brand, to more complex things like implementations and the way and the technology behind. I mean, we have essentially 14 variations of the same product in each of the 14 markets, right?